If you have ever wondered the secrets behind those people, those unicorns that are landing 3 offers in 1 month in today's job market, then this episode is for you. I have brought on my longtime client and friend, Aaron, on to share his secrets of how he landed 3 incredible job offers in only 1 month inside of HR Star. And he shares his inspirational journeys, the ups, the downs, and what he learned along the way so that you can apply it too. P.S. If you haven't heard yet, we are officially in the biggest hiring season of the year, which means, of course, HR Star is currently open. So for the next couple of days, I'm including bonuses worth over $3,000 for those of you that want to also land multiple offers in this market and who want to become top candidates that are being noticed and seen in today's hiring market. So HR Star is my signature coaching program for HR professionals. It is the one that you've heard all of the results from in all of the episodes on this podcast. It's for those HR professionals that want to land their next HR role as quickly and painlessly as possible. And inside of HR Star, I walk you through every single step of the way, from the resume transformation to creating a custom pitch, walk you through how to interview and also enter the hidden job market. And HR Star is designed specifically for today's challenging job market. So I've made enrollment a complete no-brainer. I'm including $3,000 worth of bonuses when you swipe up. And I've also opened a 12-month payment plan just to make the decision even easier. I would love to support you. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me a DM on LinkedIn. Love you so much, and I'll see you inside this episode. Hey, it's Irina Pozan, and welcome back to the Career Cravings Podcast. This podcast has a simple mission. It's to help ambitious professionals like you build the career and life that you've been craving. Over the past 15 years, I've worked as an HR leader, designed hiring systems, led recruitment teams, and I've sat on the other side of the hiring table. I've seen what works in today's job market, what doesn't, and what separates those good candidates from the ones that actually land their dream roles. Now I'm bringing everything I've learned straight to you. Each episode is packed with actionable insights and tools to help you land your dream role sooner. Now let's dive in. All right. Hi, Aaron. I'm so excited to have you here and to chat. I feel like we have been running into each other at different events lately and seeing you in person for a couple of times. And I'm so excited that you're here to kind of talk about your journey and, what you have been up to and all of those good things. I know there's a lot of lessons that our listeners can take away as well. So let's dive in. I'd love to hear when we originally met. I'd love to hear where were you at that time, and take us back to the beginning.
Okay, yeah, great. So when we originally met, I was about 8 years into my HR career, and I was really feeling hungry for something different. I'd been working in a lot of HR operational roles, kind of those day-to-day HR manager roles, doing employee relations, labor relations, dealing with all the fires, all that stuff. And I really just had, a thought in terms of, okay, what's next? Is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my career? Somebody in my network said to me, basically you got to figure out, a path either where you're going to go down consultants, if you're going to stay in this kind of small mid-size area, or business, you're going to have to eventually consult, or you're going to have to figure out how to move into a larger organization and work more strategically. And I thought, okay, well, what do I want to do? And, without having worked in a larger organization before, I thought this could be a bit of a tricky transition. Really need to think about that, really need to think about, marketing and really marketing yourself and really thinking about how do you sell yourself out there to recruiters and to your network and things like that. So I came across you on LinkedIn and I saw that you were, talking about this and then having that exact same conversation, and one thing led to another, and here we are today.
I love that. And what I remember from our first conversation is you were at this pivotal point of finishing your MBA. You were like about to finish it. You were at the end. You could see the finish line. And I think a huge accomplishment like that too makes you wonder, like, okay, I invested in my education. I've accomplished this thing that I wanted for a long time. I did it. And what's next?
Absolutely. That's exactly where you're thinking. or what I was thinking, in terms of, it's funny because I definitely remember feeling the burnout. I remember talking about that with a lot of my classmates, just, okay, we're at the last class, we're done, but still had this drive that I wanted a little bit more. How do I use how do I use this MBA? How do I use my experience to step up in my career?
Yeah.
Again, like I said, that's what ultimately led to us having a discussion.
Yeah. And it's like you said, you were 8 years in. And I remember thinking a similar thing. I feel like around this decade mark is such a huge milestone.
Yeah.
We're sort of like, we're done with the entry level stuff, right? We checked the boxes, we got that experience.
Yeah.
And then we're deeper in our careers and we have more options at that point, right? Do I want to go to leadership? Do I want to go into more strategic roles? Do I want to try my hand at a larger company, right? And it's like stepping back and thinking, okay, what is next? So how did you get clear on what that next path should look like for you? Because I know a lot of people struggle with deciding when there are multiple options on ways you can move forward. How did you go about that kind of thinking process of what's next for you?
I think it really was just taking that time to think and to speak to others, that are in, similar, kind of a similar situation. I mean, as you mentioned, you've gone through this, in your career, right? A lot of people have gone through something similar as I'm going through right now. And like you said, that itch. But I think really what it comes down to is why. Why do you, for me, it was, why do I want to become more strategic? Will I enjoy that work? Will that lead to other opportunities? Will that lead to, a better understanding of business? What is that why, right? And for me, it really was all the above, right? It was really trying to understand how I can help a business at scale, right? I really enjoy working, and I still really enjoy working with small and mid-sized businesses, but how can I really make an impact, not just on 50 people, but on 500 people, on 5,000 people. So that's what really drives me.
I love that. And there's so many ways. We were just talking before we turned this on about the how. There's so many different ways that we can do the how. And for me, it's like I worked in HR, as you know, for like 15 years.
Yeah.
And I thought that I kept landing these different roles and one was different than the next. And then I thought when I started this business that it was going to be totally different completely separated from what I was doing previously. But when I look back, my mission was always the same. It was to help people develop in their careers, but the way in which I did that was different. So I love what you just said. It's like, you love that. And how you do that, you can choose the path that looks like that. And I remember the aha moment. I remember us talking and you're like, it would be great to do what I've been doing for another company that is great or maybe larger. And we were thinking about, the whole pitch along with that and the resume that goes with that. So walk me through, I guess, what happens next once you did decide what that next path would look like for you.
Yeah. So once we went through the resume transformation, which was of course great, really started spending a lot of time thinking about that. What is going to be my, 60-second pitch? What are the top 5 stories, that I want to make sure that I say in my interview? What message, do I want? Like what message and what do I want the individual that I'm speaking to kind of take away, thinking, this would be a great fit or, I could see, a lot of different avenues this could go in. And that's the beauty of our career, right? I mean, especially with career pathing, it's not always a straight line anymore, right? It kind of goes like this, or it can kind of go like that, or maybe even dip a little bit at times. And then you could see a big takeoff at another, at another point. So, for me, it really was just having a strategy, having a plan. And once I had that, a lot of phone screens, a lot of interviews started happening. And as I started to get those phone screens and as I started to get some of those interviews, the confidence just built. The confidence just built more and more and more. And then, it got to a point where I was basically, my full-time job is taking interviews and phone screens and networking and doing all that. I knew eventually something was going to happen. And it did, as you know, I got 3 offers in pretty quick succession. And that was a good reminder, things can, especially when you're trying to make a change, it's uncertain, right? Your future's uncertain, your skills are valuable, right? And I think I'd want to also say that to to all your listeners there. I've listened to many of their stories. They absolutely have value. It's a good reminder, when that happens, that you bring something to the table. Don't forget.
Yes, I love that. And, it's so easy to remember our value and how desirable we are when I remember at the time you were landing like interviews every day. I remember you were like, I've had 7 interviews this week and I have 7
Yeah.
interviews next week. I'm like, oh my goodness, are you okay? Like, how are you doing that? That's a lot. But it's so easy to be confident when you are getting 3 offers
Yeah.
like you did in like a month of essentially of interviewing. And it's so easy to be confident when you know you've gone to some interviews, they went well, they keep inviting you back, and there's more calls just happening all the time. But how do we remind ourselves of our value on our own, right? Was there a point where your mindset shifted before that snowball effect of like the interviews coming in, the offers coming in? Was there a point where that shifted your confidence even before the external started
Yeah.
validating your experience?
Yeah, I would definitely say that preparation and just even kind of that, positive affirmation, right? You would tell yourself, right? Like, hey, it's going to be okay. It's all going to work out in the end. Keep going, keep grinding. Your time's coming. And I think if you think about things from that aspect, and I know it's hard. I know it's hard when you're grinding and you're really, really trying to find that, your rent or your mortgage is due and you need to get paid quickly. It could be hard to do that, but, stay consistent, stay believe in yourself, bet on yourself, right? That's the best advice I can give you. The job market is hard enough and you'll get lots of negative feedback. You don't need any more. Stay focused, remind yourself that, you have skills, you've got abilities, and organizations will see now.
Yes, the right one will see it and everything happens in the right timing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like I'm hearing you say almost like have faith, like just knowing your own worth and like have faith that it's coming and, your time is coming. Okay, I love it. So what were some of the biggest shifts for you in our time working together, going through that process? Was there anything that stood out in terms of just aha moments?
It'll sound funny to say as an HR professional, but interviewing really is a skill that you have to learn, right?
Yes, you're speaking. I'm like nodding. If people can't see this, I'm like, yes, preach. It
For
really
sure.
is a skill.
Job
Yes.
hunting is a skill, right? Understanding how and where to network, how and when to look for work, right? What roles to target, understanding what, the market values your skills at, and not settling for less, right? It's all of that. And I think just, understanding all of that mind shift, like all of that mind shift and all of that, processing all that information and again, staying consistent. I mean, that was really I think your question was the kind of more like the game changer, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, and that's really what it was. And once you understand how this works, and it's kind of like sales in a way, right? If you apply to 100 companies, you might hear back from 5, or if you're lucky, 10, 15 back, right? Don't feel discouraged, right? There's lots of reasons why you don't hear back. It's not a match. Something happens internally, priorities change, all those kind of things. Somebody gets referred, all that stuff happens. So just really stay consistent, really keep going, and keep reminding yourself that, you're going to do this. It's going to be fine. You just keep the work.
Yes. Yes. Love that. And like keeping the end goal in mind. It is
Yeah.
often a numbers game, right? It's like, it's just the nature of the market. Even if you are the perfect fit, you're a great candidate on paper, you could see that you match. Of course, there's like you talked about the strategy that can help, the interview skills that will help, the resume that will help. But at the end of the day, even if you have all of that, it will be a numbers game often, right?
Right. So if you have that confidence, it's not arrogance, it's confidence, right? They sense that. And that I think also makes you more appealing to them. Right. So if there is kind of a tiebreaker, you say this a lot, right? The person with the most skills doesn't always necessarily get the job. It's the one who is able to convey their worth to them back that generally ends up with the role. And I can tell you definitively that is true.
Yes. Well, so I'd love to hear your experience, but it's like I've interviewed because I used to work in a nuclear energy company. I've interviewed so many people that were engineers that are like the most qualified people. Like there were people that worked at that company that were literal rocket scientists, but it wasn't in their skill set to just naturally know how to interview or to tell their story in a way that lands. And sometimes, like, even if they're so brilliant, they would crush it in the role. They would do so great on the practical aspect of the interview. Unfortunately, there's so many biases that play into the interview process. And if you're speaking to a recruiter and the message isn't landing, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how qualified you are because they'll call the next person that can explain it and the match will be more clear, and it's simpler to put someone in front of the hiring manager that can interview well. It's less of a risk. And then that's kind of how things go.
Yeah.
We are officially in the biggest hiring season of the year, January, and enrollment for HR Star is officially open. HR Star is my signature coaching program for HR professionals who want to land their next HR roles as soon as possible. And many do in as little as 3 weeks, up to 3 months. And the results are literally guaranteed so that it's a no-brainer. When you hop into HR Star before doors close on February 2nd, you will be receiving $3,000 in bonuses, a bonus one-to-one coaching session, a full resume transformation, a custom pitch, and a live LinkedIn audit to match your new brand story. And I've opened up a 12-month payment plan option to make the decision a no-brainer. If you have been loving all of the testimonials that you are hearing and success stories from HR Star, then it is officially your turn to hop in. Spots are limited and doors close on February 2nd. Go grab your seat, and I cannot wait to support you. The link is in the show notes. So any specific shifts that come to mind that would be helpful for someone to hear of, like something that you had shifted in your interview approach or your pitch or resume or anything like that?
Honestly, it's really about strategy, so know the role that you're interviewing for, right? I mean, I understand, you'll have the job posting. You may get a job, a detailed job description depending on who you're talking to. Do research about the organization and come in there prepared with questions. So show them that you're interested. Show them that, yeah, this could be a great match. And I recognize that. And, help me understand this. Your culture is, your culture is XYZ. Talk to me about that. Recruiters and hiring managers are expecting questions about, is this a remote workplace or what's the salary? When's the start date? All those kind of things. Really trying to get into the weeds and talk to on the other side about that. Shows that you are invested, shows that you're engaged. So I remember before we started working together, Irina, I got nothing back. I hardly heard from anybody. I think I got one, maybe two phone screens. One got to an interview, like nothing, right? But then after we started working together, I got kind of ramped up for the winter of 2024 and started, really applying. That's when I started to see results. I started to see, out of every 10 applications where I'd only hear 100 applications where I'd hear one, I started hearing back from one or two employers every 10 or 15 applications.
Wow.
Yeah, that was great. And, your help with, the resume really, really started that. But what I really learned throughout the process and talking to, these organizations is they really want to hear your story and they really want to hear what makes you and how does that fit with their team? How does that fit with their organization?
Yes.
And not forcing it, right? I mean, I think, initially I used to try to tell people, what I thought they wanted to hear, but reframing the story to, hey, this is me. This is what I bring to the table. Here's the experiences I've had. Here's kind of the ups and downs I've had in my career and what I've learned from that. And here's what I want. Here's what I'm looking for next. Does that fit you? Or do you fit, not so much you fit me, but does that fit what you're looking for?
Yes.
And then you get to the point where you have those engaging conversations with recruiters and, they'll tell you stuff, right? They'll tell you, oh yeah, absolutely. We're really having this issue with, employee engagement, or we're really trying to get people back to the office, or whatever the situation is. And you have a conversation with them and you kind of almost interject a little bit, right? And kind of talk to them. And yeah, it was a lot of that. It was just a lot of good conversations. Even the roles that I didn't get offers for or get to the final stages, a lot of recruiters told me, like, I really enjoyed the conversation. I'm going to keep you in mind. And I've been able to keep in touch with many of them. So I thought about it kind of in those kind of parameters. And I think that really helped with my objective of finding a role.
So I love what you just said. And most people struggle with this. I would say like an expert level interview skill at this point, where you can actually listen to, deliver your pitch or deliver your response on whatever they asked you, but make it a two-way conversation. Like, does this resonate? Is this also something that you're seeing at your company? And often the answer is yes, because otherwise they would have never asked you the question in the first place. And the more it can be that, it becomes more comfortable, more fluid. And then that's a sign of a really like 10 out of 10 kind of interview. So you were having a lot of 10 out of 10 interviews because you kept being invited to more stages.
Yeah.
which is fantastic. And how did you become comfortable enough to be able to tell your story in a way that was aligned with what the company needed?
So practice for sure, right? Using kind of using the stuff that we learned in HR Star with you, Arena, definitely was a great start, but honing it to a point where it worked for me. Like it was natural for me to
Yeah.
explain my story to you, right? I remember I was able to do it definitely towards the end of my job search without even practicing it, without even looking at it. I knew it, right?
Yes.
And that's the level I think you have to get to in terms of selling yourself, selling your skills. So however that works for you, it's really the best way to kind of go about that for sure.
Practice is everything, because even if you've done something in your career that has been amazing, perfectly aligned, if you've never said it out loud before, and the first time you're saying it out loud is to this stranger who is, you feel like, assessing you in that moment, and it's a stressful situation, it's going to come out jumbled and kind of weird, right? So it's like the more comfortable you are with that story, even the more believable that it will be. It could be the same story, exactly what you've done, like all of your valid experiences. But if it sounds unpolished, it could be less believable as well, right? Because people are like, how do you not remember, the results that you got in this or that, right? How do you not remember the onboarding program you created? And
Yeah.
that recollection is so, so helpful. I love that. So you mentioned getting the 3 offers in 1 week. And I remember you sending me that famous text message on LinkedIn where you're like, I can't believe this. 2 are dream offers. And I was like, okay, let me know, like whatever you need support with and deciding. But how did you weed through that process of having multiple options and deciding which one would be aligned for your next chapter?
It was hard. It was humbling, right? Because, for 3 organizations to say, we want to hire you, and I can't remember if I told you this story, Irina, but one of them I remember happened kind of in between. I knew the other 2 were going to happen, or they were getting very close. They were right there. It was a great interview, and I had a great conversation with the hiring manager. And I remember talking to the recruiter after and said, yeah, it was great. Everything went well, but I just want you to know that, if you do want to move forward, let me know, right? I something might be coming. Okay, that's great. And, I didn't know if that was going to be, I'm going to get self-selected out, or, it's just going to get them to ramp up. I didn't really expect anything, but what happened next really shocked me. About an hour later, I had an offer on the table. That was one of the 3 offers that I got. And, I went, oh my God. Right? What do I do? But to answer your question, I really worked through what the offers entailed. They all had very similar income. They all had similar, kind of different, kind of total rewards benefits, slightly different perks, slightly different vacation, all that kind of stuff. But I really just put it in a chart. I literally just, put it in a chart.
Oh, wow.
Company 1, company 2, company 3, what's the salary? Where are they located? What's, and what's important to me, right? What are the benefits like? Benefits are very important to me. Is it hybrid? Is it in office? Is it remote? Right? Like, what does it look like? And then what were some of the other perks? Is there an RSP? Is there a pension? What's that go? What does that look like? And I really tried to make an objective decision. And then I just kind of stopped and thought, who did I have the best rapport with? Like, who did I really get along with? Who did I really click with? And that's why I clicked with all 3, but I really clicked with this one hiring manager, and that's where I went.
That gut feeling, right? So I love how your rational brain, you're like, I'm going to have a spreadsheet. It's like kilometers to home and this and that and the salary and the role.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, I love that you step back and you're like, okay, who do I actually want to work with every day? Because that's what it is. You're committing to seeing this person.
Yeah.
Often, our manager often shapes the whole role and what that looks like. So I love it.
And all 3 companies are fantastic, by the way. I will say that they're all fantastic, and I can see them. I see their brand on social media. The other organizations I didn't work with. I actually see one of the companies that I didn't end up going with. I see their employees and their company swag out all the time. So it was a tough decision, but I think it really comes down to what works for you, as like you said.
I love that. And something that you mentioned, I don't want to skip over it because it's so, so important. I was actually just talking about this on today's HR Star call with someone else who got a verbal offer. But that point where you mentioned, you went to them and you're like, listen, if you want to move forward, this is what I have going on. I have these other offers. I'm letting them know. And you weren't sure how that was going to go, if you were just going to lose the opportunity. But doing that makes you so much more desirable because when people hear, especially in this market, that you have other options, all of a sudden they get prepared to act because they don't want to lose the opportunity to work with you as well, right? So for anyone listening, I know it's such a privilege to have even options in today's market or even multiple conversations at this point. But when that does happen, make sure that the other parties know. And what I always like to tell people is exactly what you did. And it obviously worked for you as well. But it's like, let the others know. And it often results in multiple offers when you're like, hey, I believe in transparency. I just want to share a recent update that's happened. Like I received another offer, but here's why I'd love to work with you. Right. So if you'd like to move forward, just letting you know, I believe in transparency and this is how it is. Right. And then they came back an hour later. So love that for you.
It was great. And for me, and it's not even from like, hey, if you want me, you better act now. It's not like that at all, right? I really think of anybody that I get to meet, recruiter, somebody in my network. It's relationship based. We don't know when we're going to cross paths again, right?
Yes.
And I personally naturally like to meet people and get to know them and whatnot. So naturally, I'll be like that anyway. So for me, it was all about transparency. It's like, look, I don't want to waste anybody's time. This is what's going on, just so you know, right? And that's it wasn't even discouraging them. It was just saying, hey, look, just so you know, this is where I'm at, right?
1,000%. And what I hated most in the recruiting space was having a great candidate, but not knowing that they had a development. And then eventually we go back, like say it's a week later and we go back and we're like, hey, we'd love to see you again. And they're like, I accepted another offer. And I'm like, wait, what? Why didn't you just say something? Because we would have expedited, right? And like,
absolutely,
what happened? So that transparency is really, it's not just saying, hey, take it or leave it. It's really helpful for the hiring side too, because you never know when you are someone's top candidate, right? And obviously in that case you were. So it's so, so helpful.
I was going to say, a lot of your listeners have probably been recruiters as well or talent acquisition specialists. So you do have an understanding of that. You understand what it's like to be on the other side. So use that to your advantage, right? Use that to your advantage in terms of if I were interviewing me objectively, right? Because we all have biases, but objectively, well, how would you handle this situation and try to kind of act accordingly on the other side, to get to where you, ultimately where you want to get to is in working with that company.
Yes, I love it. So building relationships. I love the way you positioned it because a lot of people look at networking as an in the moment need where it's like, okay, I will network today because I need a job right now, right? And then often it's often too late, right? So I love what you said about the people that you had the opportunity to meet, to connect with, to speak to build relationships with, keeping that because you never know. In 5 years, you could be working at the same company. Or, I've crossed paths many times with people in our industry. Often, it is a small kind of closed industry and it happens all the time. Like even the events we go to, right? I bumped into you recently at an event, at a conference. And I'm like, I had no idea you're going to be here.
Literally. Yeah. That's so funny.
So it's such a small world, right? So that does happen all the time. And keeping those relationships, even when you do accept another offer, so that you could check in with people and see kind of where that leads. So I know you are super big on relationships. Where can people find you if they want to connect for a coffee chat, if they want to ask you questions, if they're also in our realm of HR and recruitment and all that good stuff? Tell us, where can we find you?
Well, the best place for sure is LinkedIn. Yeah. So definitely add me there, and I encourage all your listeners to do that. I love meeting, other professionals in our industry. So yeah, drop me a line. Absolutely. You'll find me out and about, as you know, Irina, at events and looking to meet people and building those connections. So, don't be shy, reach out. And
I love that. Okay. I'm going to link Aaron's LinkedIn in the show notes. So just swipe up and you can find it there. And Aaron, thank you so much for being here, sharing your story, sharing the journey along the way. I know it's not always easy. From a distance, it looked very easy from seeing kind of what you had went through, but there is so much mindset and so much perseverance that has to happen for anyone to get those results. So I love that. Is there anything else, any final thoughts, anything we didn't touch on that you would like to share Anything we missed?
Yeah, just maybe some words of motivation, I guess, for everyone. I know the job market's kind of nuts right now, and it's really easy to feel deflated, feel frustrated. It's not a reflection on you, and I think that's kind of also what I learned as well. It's not a reflection on you and your skill set. It's a difficult market right now, so give yourself some of that grace where you can, and pick yourself back up and find your next opportunity. It's out there.
1,000%. It is out there. You're such a great example of understanding that it's a tough market, but not letting it take you down, right? Because a lot of people will get into that spiral of it's so difficult, it will never happen, or I've tried everything, it's just not happening. No one's responding back. And I think, now to this point, it has been 3 years of this difficult job market, which actually just means it's the new normal. And I don't see it changing in 2026. And I'm not sure about 2027 either, which just means we're in this new job market and it's up to us to adapt. So if something isn't working, we have to adapt. If AI is making it so difficult to get noticed, then it's up to us to do everything in our power to make sure that a prospective employer can see somehow notice our application and see our value through a conversation, right? And it's up to us to evolve as well. So love that. All right. I know you'll get many messages. So thank you for sharing your story. And I can't wait to see you again at some event.
Same here.
So much,
thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Chat soon. We are officially in the biggest hiring season of the year, January, and enrollment for HR Star is officially open. HR Star is my signature coaching program for HR professionals who want to land their next HR roles as soon as possible. And many do in as little as 3 weeks, up to 3 months. And the results are literally guaranteed so that it's a no-brainer. When you hop into HR Star before doors close on February 2nd, you will be receiving $3,000 in bonuses, a bonus one-to-one coaching session, a full resume transformation, a custom pitch, and a live LinkedIn audit to match your new brand story. And I've opened up a 12-month payment plan option to make the decision a no-brainer. If you have been loving all of the testimonials that you are hearing and success stories from HR Star, then it is officially your turn to hop in. Spots are limited and doors close on February 2nd. Go grab your seat, and I cannot wait to support you. The link is in the show notes. Hey, before you go, if you've enjoyed listening to today's show, I would love your support. Please take a moment to leave a review anywhere where you listen to podcasts. And here's the exciting part. I'm running a special contest and giving away a one-on-one session with yours truly. All you have to do is leave a review, take a screenshot, and send it to me in my DMs. All of my contact info is in the show notes. I appreciate you so much, and I cannot wait to build the career and life that you've been craving together. See you next week.